A very good evening to all the people who have logged in today. I will start my session first of all by thanking Dr. Parker and Dr. Rama for making me feel so welcome. And next, I would like to thank Dr. Savita, first of all, for inviting me to this webinar and also for coordinating with me throughout. And a big thanks to the SRM family for organizing this two-day FDP program. Now, before I start my session today, I want to say a few things. The number of publications that I have to my name are just a fistful. So you might be wondering, why would you even waste your time listening to a webinar, given by me? That's because I feel that I have made a lot of mistakes in my life when I started with my research. I went to research without knowing much, without doing a lot of background work. So I feel I can help people who are aspiring research scholars or faculty members who are planning to publish articles in journals. They might just get a few pointers from the mistakes that I have done, and maybe they will not repeat the same mistakes. So, with that, I will first share my screen. Just give me a moment here. Dr. Parker, is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am, it's perfectly
Yeah.
visible.
Yeah, thank you. And I would like you to put everyone else on mute.
Yes, yes, everyone else is on mute.
Oh, thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the way I have named the webinar today is, how to ease your way into research publication. And I will move to the next slide here. And in this slide, I would like to talk about some of the, sub points that I'm going to be covering today. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about that what qualifies as a research article, if you're planning to publish, or what are the parameters that you have to look into before you can call it a research article. The second point that I'm going to be covering, the reasons why somebody would want to, publish an article. What are the driving factors behind the desire to publish any research article? And coming from there, we'll be moving to the third point where I'll be talking about two ways in which you can go ahead and publish an article. The fourth point that I'll be covering is about a few terms that are related to research publication. Now, I did not know many of these terms, and I had a very vague understanding of these terms. And I feel that there are a lot of people like me, who are equally vague in their understanding about these terms. And at most times, we're very embarrassed to say that we don't know, so we simply just gloss over it. So I felt it would be good to give a little bit of an overview of certain terms. The fifth thing I'll be doing is I'll be looking at a fail-safe plan on how to go from start to finish to publishing your paper. Then I'll be looking at how you go ahead and edit your work correctly, because there are very stringent demands about formatting and editing of research articles. And the last point that I'm going to be covering today are some of the must-have software that it is not just enough that you know the names of these softwares. You should be able to download it, and you should be able to use them comfortably, because life will become a lot easier as a research scholar when you are able to weave in these softwares into your research endeavors. So next I'll be moving to part one, but before I start with part one, I would like to highlight this quote by Dan Brown, and he says that Google is not a synonym for research. And I have noticed that what most research scholars do, because they are new to the idea of writing papers or publishing articles, is that they go to different websites through Google search engine. They copy paste from here, maybe they paraphrase a little, and they prepare their paper or they prepare their article. But this is not what is research. So coming from this quotation, I'll be going to the next thing that I'm going to be talking about is what qualifies as a research article. Now, if you have to call a piece of work a research article, the first point it should fulfill is that it should be research based. Now, what do I mean by research based? That means it should have some new data, it should have fresh data, a new perspective, and new finding, and that will make it research based, something that you have found out. The next point is that a research article should be unique and original. If you prepare a research paper or an article on the basis of secondary data, that means data which has been published by other people, either in the hard copy format or in the print format, and you just regurgitate secondary data in your paper, then your paper is not unique because it does not have anything that you have found out. It does not contain primary data, it does not contain primary findings, so it fails to be either unique or original. Next, I'm going to be talking about that a research article should be a valuable addition to the existing amount of knowledge that is already there in the world. So, whether you are writing a research article in literature or in language, or for that matter, any other subject, you have a section called literature review. Now, the very purpose of literature review is for the researcher to go back into the past and to read up and collect information about what other researchers have said so far. And your job as a researcher is to take up the baton and to proceed further and to cover new ground, to cover fresh ground. So only when you're adding to the existing knowledge, database that is already there, you are producing a research article. The fourth point that I'm going to be talking about is that if your article is of good quality, then it will be readily accepted not only nationally but internationally in good journals, good index journals. Now, this I consider as a litmus test, and I request all researchers to send your articles for publication in very good journals. Now, if it gets accepted, then you already know that what you have produced is good quality. But in case it gets rejected, the chances of rejections are very high. It tells you that you are still not up to the mark, and you need to get this setback. It is very disappointing to be rejected, but rejection has its own benefit. It encourages you to work harder and produce better quality work. So keep sending your manuscript, keep sending your articles to good journals, and you will see over a period of time, through multiple rejections, every time you go back to it, work on it, the quality of your article has improved. The next thing I'm going to be talking about is a research article is meant to be read by people. Your findings, you made so much effort to find something, is because you want to take your findings to the world. Now, when people refer to your article again and again, then it means that they're coming back to it because you have given some additional valuable information. And this is also one more way of checking whether your research article is worthwhile or not. Next, I'm going to be talking about the difference between a research article and a research paper. In India, I had noticed that people use the word article and paper interchangeably, but they are not the same thing, though both of them are research based. Now, when you're talking about an article is meant for publication in a journal in the print format. It can be in a hard copy journal or it can be in a digital format, but nevertheless, it comes in the printed format. But when we're talking about a research paper is presented orally, and mostly research papers are prepared with the intention of presenting it in conferences or in classrooms. So this is the major difference between journal articles and conference papers. So you have to refer to your research work with the correct word, correct terminology. Now, coming from here, I'll go to the next slide, part two. And here again, I have one more quotation. And this says, that no one is treated with more patronizing condescension than the unpublished author. And I can tell you from my own experience, how important it is to have the correct number or the right number of publication to your credit. Now, I have never indulged in research for the sake of publishing. I do a lot of research, but I never really bothered to get it published because, first of all, I'm very lazy. And the second thing is, I never realized the importance of publishing my findings. So, when did I get my comeuppance? Is a few years back, I applied for IIM Kozhikode, a position there, and I pretty much did very well. They liked me. They understood that I am okay enough, to be offered a place. However, when it came to the number of publications, they could not give me the position because I did not have the requisite number of publications to my name. So obviously, I lost a very, very good opportunity. The second thing also, I'll be saying, a lot of people approach me and ask me if I can help them, guide through their PhD thesis, if I can be their guide. And the one thing that I tell them is that I'm not a registered guide, because in order to be a registered guide, you need a certain number of publications, certain number of years experience. Now, I have years of experience, but I don't have the numbers of publications. So hence, I'm coming to the next part of my webinar, where I want to talk about that why do you want to publish and why it is important to publish your paper or your article. So there are two reasons that I see why people are motivated to publish anything. One is you undertake research for the sake of research because you love finding new things, because you're an inquisitive person, and the other one is where you go into publishing because of your career sake, for advancement in your career, for the next promotion. Okay, so if I'm talking about research for research sake, then there is no compulsion. You undertake research because you really love researching, for the love of it, you're passionate about it. But when you have to publish something for the sake of your career, then most times it is out of compulsion. Many of us are really not very keen on publishing, like me. But again, I have suffered a lot of setback because I did not publish a lot of papers. Coming to the next point, if you're taking, you're undertaking research for research sake, then it's not time bound. You can take your own sweet time to look into the topic, to collect data, to analyze. But when it's for your career, then there are always, time constraints, because in India, I have noticed that most of the time when you get to the task of writing something, it's mostly because of a conference that has come up. And the information about these conferences are sent maybe a week prior to the submission date. So most of us are in a tearing hurry to finish writing a paper. So there's a lot of constraint. Coming from this point is that when you're talking about research for research sake, there's a freedom for choice of topic. That means you can take up a topic that you really feel for, that you're really passionate about. But in terms of publishing a paper, most of the time we are writing a paper because there is a conference which has come up. And you will see that most conferences have a fixed theme. So what we do is we write a paper and we tailor the topic to fit into the theme of the conference. So most times the choice of topic is pretty limited and restricted. Next, I'm going to be talking about the quality. When you're talking about research for research sake, then you are taking up a topic that you really love. You have a lot of time. okay, you're passionate about it. So the quality is pretty much inherent in your work, because here it is not work anymore, it's akin to worship. But when you're talking that about your career, I have seen that people churn out papers overnight, and most of the time they visit various websites, collect data and just put it together, and they go ahead and call it a research paper. So it is anybody's guess what kind of quality people will be producing. Next is we are talking about quality versus quantity. Now, if you're undertaking research for research sake, then you are more focused on the quality of your work, and hence you cannot produce a lot of quantity of work. So the number of publications might be less or it might suffer. But when you're talking about publication for your career, then the number of publications are innumerable, because here the focus is not on the quality but on the quantity. And I'm surprised to see that people have 50, 60, 70 publications to their name, and I keep wondering how is it even humanly possible. And then I realize what trick people follow. So most of them go for this co-authorship deal. That means two people, they put in some effort, write a paper, and in case it gets published, then both of them get their name in the list and it adds on to their list. A second way why people have a lot of publications is I have seen a lot of research guides who pretty much insist their research students to add their names as co-authors to any paper that they publish. And this is how people end up getting innumerable number of publication. But again, at when you see the quality of these publications, most of them are not up to the mark. Now, when we're talking about research for research sake, you may get into research with the intention of publishing, but it is not mandatory. So you might just be happy finding out something and sharing it with your students or implementing it on your students and not really publishing it. But when you're talking about your career, the very fact that you indulged into research was because you wanted to publish your articles. So this is the basic difference between why somebody would want to publish, and these are the two reasons. Now I'll move to part 3, and in part 3 I'll be talking about the two methods in which you can publish your articles. But before I go to that, I will first want to discuss this particular quotation by Emily Dickinson, and I found it really very pertinent for this part. She says that publication is the auction of the mind of man. So let me put it this way, that if you produce good quality work, if your article is good and it gets published in a good journal, then scholars are willing to pay a subscription fee to read what you have published. But if you are publishing poor quality articles, then what you're doing is you're pretty much bribing these predatory journals, and you're buying yourself a slot in a journal. And trust me, nobody is ever going to pay a subscription fee to read what you have written. You will get the numbers, but you will never reach out to the people. So this is what I mean by auctioning off the best minds. If your work is good, people will be willingly paying to read what you have written. So coming from there, I'll be talking about the two alternative paths to publishing. The first one is through paid journals, and the second one is through unpaid journals. So let me just take you through the differences, because understanding the differences will make you or help you decide in which kind of journal you would want to publish your article. Now, at times it makes sense to go for paid journals, but at times it also makes sense to go for unpaid journals. So let us look at the benefits and some of the drawbacks of these two. So starting with paid journal, a paid journal, you might have to pay anything between 2,000 to 6,000 rupees in India, and they call it the article processing charges, which is euphemism for basically saying that you pay us and we turn a blind eye to the quality of your work. But when you're talking about unpaid journals, you don't pay a single penny from your pocket. You invest in terms of time, in terms of hard work, in terms of devotion you have put to it, but in terms of money, you don't have to pay anything. Now, going to the second point, if you're going for paid journals, it's open for all, and everyone, all and sundry, can publish if you're able to cough up the requisite amount for the charges. Anyone can publish, but in unpaid journals, only a select few people who have top notch quality work will be able to publish. Coming to the third point, paid journals, if you notice, they have quarterly issues, which means that in a year they, publish 4 times. So, it's a simple concept that if the quantity is more, then obviously the quality is not very good. So there is only a waiting period of 2 to 3 months between you submitting and paying the amount and it appearing in the published form. But when you're talking about unpaid journals, you will see good journals, they produce maybe one issue per year. So it takes them a lot of time to scrutinize your work, to send it for actual peer reviewing. Here, it's not just a term peer reviewing, they actually send it for peer reviewing, and the standards are very stringent, and you might have to wait anything between 1 year to 1.5 years to see your work getting published in an unpaid journal. Next is, again, because anybody can publish any kind of article can be published, most paid journals are not of very good standard. But when you're talking about unpaid journals, the unpaid journals, you can close your eyes and pretty much rest assured that whatever they'll publish will be of a standard variety. So coming from this point, I'll go to the next point, that paid journals, because the quality is not very good, if they make it subscription based, you can rest assured that there'll be not a single person who will pay money to read any of these paid journals. So they are forced to make it open access. Open access means anyone can go into the journal, anyone can read, anyone can download, and anyone can cite from these papers. But when we're talking about unpaid journals, most unpaid journals have a subscription fee, and people, scholars, are more than willing to pay the subscription fee because they know that, in lieu of the subscription, they will be able to access very good articles, and it is worthwhile for their research. So when we're talking about paid journals, they earn the money through the article processing charge. But who pays these charges? You end up paying. You end up putting work for the article, and you also end up paying. But when we're talking about unpaid journals, they recover the money invested in publishing through subscriptions. And the most interesting part is that in this case, you don't pay. People pay good money to read what you have published. So this is the major difference between paid and unpaid journals. And as I said before, that at times you got to be smart, at times you might have to do a compromise and go for paid journals. But in the long run, please find time to do quality work and you aim for good unpaid journals. From here, I'll be moving to part 4. Before I go into the nitty gritty, I would like to read out this quotation, which says that the true alchemists do not change lead into gold. They change the world into words, and every day new words are being coined. And these words help us to understand the world around us better. So, in terms of publishing, also, there are a lot of publishing jargon, words specific to the publishing world, that we have come across these words, but at times we are not very sure what it exactly means. So I would like to take you through some of these terms because I feel they are very important. I did not know them, and I feel that I can help people to understand the importance of knowing these terms. The first one I'm going to be talking about is the academic index databases. Now, it's quite a mouthful. You have academic, you have index, you have databases. So I just, pare it down and break it down Now, first I'm going to be talking about an index. An index is a list which is put together for a specific purpose. So, a very good example of an index is the stock exchange index, like the BAC or the NSE. So, it's just a list of companies which feature. The same can be done for all things. Next, I'll be talking about a database. A database is nothing but a data bank, a collection of data, but a database is always in an electronic format. And of course, it is arranged in a very systematic way. So now that we understand index and database, if we apply it to academic index database, it simply means that it's a collection of research related data, maybe like journals, and information about conference papers, and it also allows you to access the abstracts or the full papers of these journals and conference papers. So basically, an academic database index is a collection where they curate the best journals, they curate the best conference papers, and they store it in one place so that people can go and look at them. Now, when we are talking about academic indexes, most of you would have heard of Scopus. Now, Scopus is one of the most well-known of academic indexes. It is supported by Elsevier, which is a company from Netherlands, and we also have the Web of Science. Now, these two are just examples. They're very well known. In the next page, what I have done is I've given a list of all the top academic indexes from around the world, and I would like to say a few things here. Now, for example, if you're going for Scopus is multidisciplinary. That means they store journals and conference papers from across different disciplines. But if you're looking at maybe an index like PubMed, now PubMed only indexes journals which are related to medicine and medical science. Here, I want to talk about EBSCO. EBSCO is very good. It is multidisciplinary. But again, the problem with Scopus and EBSCO is that these are paid indexes. That means you have to pay some amount of subscription fee in order to access the full papers. But I would like to draw your attention to DOAG. It is the Directory of Open Access Journals. So it's a completely free index. You don't pay a single penny. And the best part is that it features all the journals which are open access. That means you can enter the journals, you can download the papers, and you can cite from them. You can download the entire paper. So please take a screenshot of this, and later when you have time, you go to the websites of each of these and just acquaint yourself with how to go about looking for good scholarly articles. There are a lot of others, so you can just have a look at them according to your need. I'll be moving to the next term. The next term is index journals. We have understood what is an academic index database. Now we want to know what are index journals. So journal indexes are a list of journals which are organized by discipline, maybe the discipline of science, discipline of humanities. Then you have subjects like maybe you have English language, English literature, you have psychology, or you have maybe dentistry, and the type of publication, whether it is open access, whether it's a subscription based publication. So when you arrange journals alphabetically along these kind of things, then these journals are known as index journals. Now, index journals are considered of a higher quality than non-index journals. It is pretty much apparent because some company, for example, Elsevier, is making the effort to curate the best journals in the world, and they're featuring it in their index. Now, the moment a journal is good quality, there will be a lot of companies who want to feature it in their index. So index journals are obviously of a higher quality, than non-index journals. And the third point is that indexing ensures that your article in the journal will be read and referred to more often. The moment people want to go for good quality publication, they search for index journals. And if it is an index journal, then the possibility or the chances of people coming across your article is much higher. So your visibility and your chances of getting quoted by other researchers are high, and this is where the H index comes in. I will not go into H index, but maybe you can look at it later. Next, I'm going to be talking about academic search engines. Now, I did not know until quite a while back about academic search engines. I knew about search engines, and whatever research I had to do online, like a fool, I went through the Google, generic search engine, and then I realized that, oh my God, there is something called an academic search engine which looks specifically at scholarly content. So, it kind of fine tunes, streamlines the search process. And here is an example. Google itself has this service that they provide along with their other applications, is the Google Scholar. And we also have Microsoft offering us the Microsoft Academic. So in the next page here, I have taken a screenshot in my own computer of how Google Scholar looks like. So if you see, it's pretty much like the Google search engine, but here, instead of, other information, you have information regarding scholarly publications. They might be, segregated in terms of discipline, in terms of maybe the publication body and things like that. In the next page, I have given the example of Microsoft Academic here, and you see you can search on the basis of publications, authors. So you can just type in the name of the author, and it will spew out all the articles by all the journal articles. You can search in terms of topic. You can go and look at conference papers. You can look at different journals, and you can also look at the different institutions around the world and what kind of research they are right now indulging in. So there are various ways of going in. It's very, very simple, and it is intuitive to use. Anybody who has used other search engines can easily navigate their way around these academic search engines. Personally, I feel that Google Scholar is more efficient than Microsoft Academic. So, coming to the next part, I'm going to be talking about geography specific academic indexes. Now, sometimes you want to do a research maybe on an Indian author, and most of the research that has happened about this author is kind of limited to the subcontinent of India. So there is no point in you going to an academic index, from around the world, because you will not find anything substantial. In that case, you narrow down your search by going through geographic specific academic indexes, which searches and gives you a list of journals in your country. And a very good example of a geographic specific academic index is the Indian Citation Index. You can make a note of this, or you can take a screenshot, and people, those who are interested in literature reviews and things like that, can have a look at this index. Next, I'll be talking about the ISSN number. Now, I have always been very confused about ISSN and ISBN, but when I actually went and read up, it's very simple. The International Standard Serial Number. So the ISSN is a simple, unique number which is used to identify periodical publication. So I want to draw your attention to the word periodical. Anything that is published at a regular time interval is a periodical. So a journal is a periodical, and a magazine can also be called as a periodical. So it is an 8-digit numerical code. That means it consists only of numbers, and it can be used to identify journals and magazines, both in the print format and in the digital format. And in the next page here, I have an example of what an ISSN looks like. So these are the barcodes. You can have a look at this. This talks about the publication and things like that. But what is of importance and interest for us is these eight numbers separated by a hyphen. So you have four here in the beginning and four at the end. So this is your ISSN number, and you should be able to look at your journal and you should be able to identify the ISSN number. Next, I'm going to be talking about the ISBN number, the International Standard Book Number. And as I already mentioned, it is a set of numbers to identify books, either in the print format or in the digital format. But unlike the ISSN number, this is a 10-digit string of numbers. The ISSN is 8-digit. This is a 10-digit code. And I am going to the next page here. And here I've given an example of the ISBN number. Now, if you look at it closely, it looks very much like a mobile phone number, because our mobile phone numbers are also 10-digit. It starts with 0, and if you count, this is how it looks. And you can look at the other aspects, at home later. So I'll move on to the next screen, and here I'm going to be talking about the DOI, the Digital Object Identifier. Now, this is what you need to know about more specifically. You can forget about ISSN number and ISBN number. They are pretty much passe, because in today's time, the DOI is of the penultimate importance for anything that is published online. So what is a DOI? It is a unique code used to identify content on the internet. So anything that is published on the internet, it has a DOI number. For example, it can be a journal article or some data set. Now, the DOI is alphanumeric string. That means it has numbers, and it also has English alphabets, woven into the entire string. And it is assigned by a single registration agency throughout the world. It is assigned by the International DOI Foundation. Now, why do you need a DOI? Now, the DOI system is going to ensure that even if the journal stops, somehow, like for example, there is a publication and they close shop after 10 years. What happens to your article? If your article has the DOI, even if the journal is not anymore in function, in existence, you can still trace your article. So even in the absence of everything else might, hard copies might go, libraries might shut down, websites might shut down, everything may be lost in a flood, but what will remain for the next 100 years or more will be your DOI. So in terms of today's research, most of the research that you do, we rarely ever go to physical libraries. So most of us are accessing digital libraries. In that case, the DOI is very important. And if you look at it, this is how a DOI looks like. Now, this is information about this server here, the http/lat. This is the information, server information. Now, all DOI numbers start with 10 here, and then there's a dot, and there are other numbers. And this is of interest. See, I told you it is alphanumeric. That means it has numbers, and it is also English letters and alphabets here. So this is how a DOI looks like. And in the next picture here, I want to show how you use the DOI in your citations, because nowadays when you write your paper for any conference, or you're writing your article, most of the references that you give, you have accessed it online. So this has become absolutely important to put in your references. This is how it looks, the DOI. Okay, next I'll be moving to the IF, which is the impact factor. Now, we have heard this term, but to many of us, we are not very clear about what is the impact factor. Now, the impact factor is very simple. It means, or it gives you a frequency with which articles in a particular journal have been referred to in a 2 years' time. So a journal might have, say, 50 articles. How often each of these 50 articles have been referred to by other researchers in the last 2 years is your impact factor. Okay, now I will explain it further. Now, impact factor is used to evaluate the relative importance of a journal. So it is pretty much common sense to realize that if the impact factor is higher, that means the articles in this journal have been referred to more number of times than the journal in which the impact factor is lower. So one more thing I would like to talk about the impact factor is that the impact factor applies to the whole journal and not individual articles in the journal. So the impact factor tells you the quality of the journal, okay, not the individual articles. If the quality of the journal is good, it is pretty much a conclusion that you can come to that the articles in the journals will also be good. Now, in this slide, I'm going to show you how to read or what the impact factor. So here I had given an example of impact factor of 4 in 2018. So what does the 4 mean and 2018 and how is it calculated? I will tell you. So if you have an impact factor of 4, it means that all the articles which were published in the previous 2 years, we are talking about 2018. So all the articles published in 2016 and 2017 put together have been referred 4 times in 2018. So each paper in the article have been referred to 4 times in 2018, and the publications of these papers were done in the previous 2 years, 2016 and 17. So the impact factor is calculated in 2018, but where is the data collecting from? It coming from? It is coming from the previous 2 years. Now, one more thing is that the impact factor of 2018 is available for research scholars. This number is available only in the next year. That means you have to wait till the end of 2018 to calculate the impact factor, and the impact factor is published only in the next year. So basically, you are looking at 3 years of data collection, and you are accessing it in the fourth year. So you start from 16, 17 to collect data. You calculate it in 2018, and you find or get the calculation. The whole world gets the calculation in 2019. So here, I have given an example of how you, get a yardstick for measuring. So, impact factor of 10 is a fabulous standard of the journal. 10, rarely a fistful of journals in the whole world would have an impact factor of 10. Very good journals would have an impact factor of 6. Now, if you have an impact factor of 3 for a journal, is considered pretty good, but most average journals, that is, I'm talking about index journals, they have an average of 1 only. So, for you to start with, even with a journal which has anything between 3 to 1 as impact factor, is good. The more you become experienced in publishing, you can aim for journals with a higher impact factor. So here in the next page, I am just showing you in a pictorial form that if I want to calculate the impact factor in 2018, what I do is I count all the citations done in 2018 from the papers published in 2017 plus 2016, the previous 2 years. 18, to calculate for 18, I need to go back to 16 and 17, count the total number of citations, and also divide it by the total number of papers that were published in these 2 years, and I get my impact factor. But the impact factor of 2018 will only be available to the world in 2019. So actually, it's a lengthy process to calculate the impact factor, but it is important for us to know why and how it is calculated. So I have finished part 3, where I wanted to talk about some of the terms or terminology we come across in the publishing industry. I would have loved to go into the H index, but I thought I will not have time. But I'll just quickly tell you the H index is an indication of how often your individual paper has been cited by other researchers. So the impact factor refers to the entire journal, but the H index refers to your individual paper and how often people have cited. So the longer your academic publication career, the more number of citations you will have from all the papers that you've published, and the higher will be your H index. So in the next part here, I'm going to be talking about a foolproof plan, on how you start writing your paper from start to finish. And I found this wonderful quotation by Bernard Shaw. He has this really wicked sense of humor, and he says a foolproof method for sculpting an elephant. First, get a huge block of marble, then you chip away everything that doesn't look like an elephant. So initially, this is exactly how you go about, writing your paper. You collect a whole lot of data. You collect a whole lot of primary data. You collect a whole load of secondary data. Initially, don't look at whether it will be useful or not. You just collect and store it. And later, what you do is you start chipping away at the unnecessary things, and you boil down to the most essential things that will make your paper. So let me just have a look at a fail safe plan of how you go ahead writing your paper from scratch. So the first thing that I do whether I'm preparing for a lecture, whether I'm preparing for a webinar maybe like this, or whether I'm planning to publish an article, the first thing I do is I create a graphic organizer according to what I intend to do, what is my ultimate goal. So I will be looking at the three types of research, and I'll also show you a graphic organizer and how it will help you organize your ideas before you start writing actually. The second thing I'm going to be talking about is how you can use a Excel sheet and benefit from it by tabulating your data for the literature review part. The literature review drives us crazy because there are so many, authors that you've referred to, and by the end of a week or two, you've pretty much forgotten who has said what. So tabulating the data in an Excel sheet will save you a lot of headache, and it really helps me. I have used it myself, and I'll share it with you how to do it. And the last thing is that when you actually end up writing your paper, you must follow the hourglass model. Everything that you do, a letter has a particular pattern to it. A newspaper article has a pattern to it, a shape to it. So if you convert it into a visual shape, then the pattern of a research paper looks like an hourglass, and I will be explaining the hourglass model too. So first, let me talk about the three kinds of research. Now, I understand that the audience here today, there are people from a literature background, and there are also a few people from the language background, though people from literature are more in number in India. So I will take you through all the kinds of research which are applicable both for the literature and language people. Now, the first kind of research, which is pretty much straightforward research, is the descriptive research. Now, descriptive research is called non-comparative because here you are just observing a group of people. You're not comparing their behavior with another group of people. You're just observing a random set of people, and you are just describing, you're observing their behavior, and you're just describing. This is known as a descriptive research. So if I try to put it in words, descriptive research establishes thoughts of people. It establishes behavior of people or how people are feeling, because at the end of the day, every research has to do with either human beings or animals, but in our case, we are only dealing with human beings. So when we're talking about descriptive research, the descriptive research can answer questions like what happened after the lockdown, when did people start feeling the negative impact of the lockdown, where was the COVID most rampant, and how did it affect people. All of these questions can be answered by a descriptive research, but the only question which cannot be answered by descriptive research is why. If people are feeling pressurized, mentally unhappy during the lockdown, you cannot really identify the cause. You can only show what people are going through. So descriptive research, because it is not statistical in nature, it cannot answer why, or even if you try to answer why, it will just be an assumption. So the only drawback of descriptive research is that it cannot prove anything empirically. You can make a lot of claims, but you cannot prove your claims. These will just be claims made by the researcher. Now, descriptive research is important for people who are starting out research, because this is an easier kind of research, and you will be able to finish your research article pretty smoothly if you get into descriptive research. And let me give you an example of descriptive research. So you have the lockdown, and you want to study how it has impacted the people in and around you in our country. So if you're going to describe the impact of the lockdown, what people are thinking, how they have been behaving, how they have been feeling, and you put it in a paper, what you put it in an article or a paper, what you have is descriptive research. Okay, so most of the research that is done in the field of literature does not involve any calculation or statistics, and hence it is known as descriptive research. Now, if you want to go a little further than descriptive research, a little more complicated and a little more rewarding than descriptive research, then you move to the second kind of research, which is the correlational research. Now, in correlational research, again, it is non-comparative. That means you are just studying a random group of people, and you are tabulating their thoughts, feelings, and again, it is observational. But why it is correlational, I'll explain to you. What it does is correlational research tries to establish relationship between variables. So what is a variable? Variables are just factors involved in your research. So lockdown is a variable, and how people are reacting to the lockdown is another variable. So in correlational research, what you try to do is you try to draw a correlation, a connection between people's maybe mental health and the lockdown. Are they two related? Are they two not related? So if you're able to establish a relational possibility, then you are successful in your correlational research. So correlational research, again, the descriptive research, can draw inferences, it can make claims, but again, there is a slight drawback. You cannot prove anything statistically or mathematically. You can just establish a relationship. But this is again very, very a good kind of research, for literature. Now, look lockdown here. And if you are trying to establish a relationship between lockdown and people's mental health, how lockdown has affected people's mental health, then you're correlating mental health factor with lockdown factor. So this is known as correlational research. Okay, now let me give you another example. Since a majority of my viewers are from literature, though I haven't done any research in literature, but I could give you an example to help you understand. Now, we all know of Sylvia Plath, right? How she committed suicide at the age of 30. She put her head onto the gas oven, and she gassed herself with carbon monoxide, and she died. So when you look at Sylvia Plath's writing, then you can draw a correlation from her work to the state of her mental health, that she was a disturbed person, that she was an unhappy person, an unfulfilled person, can be pretty much garnered from her writings, from whatever she has written. So you're establishing a relation between Sylvia Plath's writing and the mental state that she was going through before she committed suicide. So this is an example of correlational research. So any kind of comparative research that you do in literature is also correlational in nature. So going to the third one, this is the most difficult of all kinds of research, which is the experimental research, and it is comparative in nature. That means you need to compare one group with another group. So you need to have two groups of people, one the experimental group and one the control group. Now, why is it called interventional? Because you're experimenting on group A, but you're not conducting the experiment on group B. So any kind of research which is scientific in nature and which deals with data, numbers, statistics is experimental in nature. And most research in language and other science subjects are experimental in nature. Now, experimental research can identify the cause and tell the effect. So identifying the cause is identifying the why. Exactly what descriptive research cannot do is identify why, is what experimental research can solve. It can tell you that if people are feeling mentally upset, then COVID is the reason, or the lockdown is the reason. And this they come down to in a mathematical way, not just by surmise or words. So in experimental research, you can prove things empirically or statistically. And here is an example. You have an experiment group here, and you also have a control group. These two groups should be similar and comparable. So taking the same example of the COVID, I am going to show that, okay, I give group A, the experimental group, a vaccine, but I don't use the vaccine for the control group. However, both the groups are being fed very well. Their immunity is being taken care of. They exercise often. But after experimentation, I see that group A, people who have been given the vaccine, they are not falling sick even after exposure to the coronavirus. That means they have become resistant to the coronavirus. But these people, despite the fact that they're eating well, they're exercising, and their immunity is fairly good, they're still falling sick and contacting corona. So here I have proved pretty much that it is only because of the COVID vaccine, the cause, that the effect is that people are 100% free and they are not going to get COVID again. So this is experimental research. Now, I will go to the next slide. And once you decide what kind of research you're going to do, whether it's descriptive, correlational, or experimental, the next part is for you to make a graphic organizer. So because most of the people today here are from the literature background, that's what I assumed. I have taken an example of correlational research, and here you want to study the impact of the lockdown on mental health. You want to establish a relationship. Lockdown is one variable, and mental health is the second variable. So, how do you go about making the graphic organizer? You want to know, did it have a negative impact? Did it have no impact, or did it have a positive impact on people's mental health? These are the only three options that you have. So you start going about collecting data in the form of survey forms, by talking to people, by taking interviews, and you find that you find three reasons to support your claim that people have been negatively impacted because of the lockdown. Okay, now when you come to the positive impacts, your data that you've collected, you could get one reason to claim that yes, people have been happy in the lockdown, but you couldn't find other reasons. You couldn't find a reason two or a reason three. When you're talking about no impact, your data collected did not give you any data at all, because there is nobody in this lockdown who was not impacted, mentally due to the lockdown. So now what you have done is you have pretty much cancelled out no impact. You don't have to worry about it. Positive impact also, you have very little support data. So now you can confidently go and say that more reasons are there to support that lockdown has affected people's mental health negatively. So now you're ready to come to a conclusion that lockdown has affected mental health mostly negatively. Now here I'm using the word mostly because here you cannot be 100% sure that the negative impact is only because of the lockdown. There can be other factors, like people have lost jobs, people have less money in their pockets to pay, and that can be one of the reasons that it has negatively. But you can pretty much draw a relation between the lockdown and negative mental health. So this is how a good graphic organizer looks. And trust me, for everything that I do in life, I first sit down with a pen and paper and I draw out my organizer, and then I start filling in data to see if it goes into a logical whole. Next, please use an Excel sheet here. Now, the Excel sheet, see, whenever you're doing a research is always about a claim. You make a claim and you either, prove the claim correct or you disprove it. You make a hypothesis, either your hypothesis is correct or your hypothesis is wrong. So there are only two ways of looking at it. Either people claim, agree to what you say, or they disagree with what you say. So when you're going to the literature review part, what you do is you take down the findings, or paraphrase the findings of the particular author or the research article from the abstract. You write down the names of the people. What you do is, in one column, you just write whether they agree with your point of view, with your hypothesis, or they go against your hypothesis. And then here, you just put the link to the article. You put the DOI. So next time when you actually go to write your paper, you can simply club these three together, the ones in pink. So, one chunk of your literature review can talk about all the researchers who agree with your point of view, but you also need to incorporate the dissenting point of view. So, you can club together the yellow people who disagree with you, and you can put them in another part of your literature review. So, this will make life a lot easier if you start tabulating data. And instead of copy pasting the entire article, what you should do in the findings is that you should paraphrase in your own words what that person is trying to say, maybe in 20, 30, 50 words. This is very helpful. Please try using it. Next, I'm going to be talking about the hourglass model. And here you see the hourglass is broad at the top, it's narrow in the middle, and again, it broadens out at the bottom. So this is exactly how all research articles or papers look like. So you start with a general statement, then you go to specific things you're talking about in your research, and from there, again, you generalize it. So this is how a paper looks like. And if you translate it in terms of the portions, or the subparts in your paper, you have the introduction. The introduction states the general problem that you see or the general thing that you're interested in finding out. Then you talk about your methodology. If it is an experimental paper, the methodology is very clear, but if it is also descriptive or correlational, you go about following some method to get your data, to get your points. So that is your methodology. Then you talk about the results. What did you find out? And you see the finding out is specific to your paper. The finding can never be reflected in any other paper. Yours is the only paper, the only unique paper in the world which will have this result. See, the methodology might be same for a lot of other papers, but the results will be exclusive to your paper. Once you have the results, you discuss the results and you put in your point of view of how you interpret the results, and then you come to some kind of a conclusion and you generalize about it. So this is how all research papers look like. If you're more interested in the types of research and classification of research, you can refer back to my YouTube channel. There are very, very extensive sessions on research methodology. Next, I'll be talking about the editing part. And here is a lovely quote by Truman Capote, and he says, "I'm all for the scissors. I believe more in the scissors than I do in the pencil. When we write, we end up writing like kilometers. Most of it is nonsense. So you need to really edit and cut out the unnecessary parts. So editing of your paper and compressing it into a nutshell is very, very important." So coming to how to learn to edit, in terms of editing, I possibly cannot teach you how to paraphrase, shorten, but I can definitely talk a little about different citation styles. I see a lot of people still confused about citation styles, especially how to cite within the sentences in your paper. Next, I'm going to be talking about how everyone should use a grammar checker and should generate a plagiarism report. And the last one is that you should find someone trustworthy who will work as a second reader and will read through your work after you have proofread it and edited one final time. Okay, so coming to the in-text citations, there are three ways to do in-text citation. In-text means that the citation information will be embedded within the sentence of the body of your paper. So there is a parenthetical citation, which means you put your reference source within brackets inside the text. Now, when you're using parenthetical citation, there are two ways to do it. One is direct quote. Now, if you have to quote maybe one sentence from some author, then you can simply put it in quotation marks. But if you have to quote something an author has said, maybe which runs to 4 or 5 lines, sentences, and it's almost a paragraph, then it does not make sense to copy paste that entire chunk of information. The best way is to paraphrase what he has said. So either you can directly quote if it is a single sentence, or you paraphrase when it is more than one sentence. And here is an example, and you will see that there are two of them here. In the first one, you see the author's name, year, and page number is given at the end of the sentence. And here it is given within the sentence at the beginning of the sentence. Now, when do we do these two? I was very confused about these two until I sat and researched about it and understood. So when you're not mentioning the author anywhere in the sentence, the author's name does not come in the sentence, then the author is put in a bracket at the end of the sentence with the year and page number. But if the name of the author is woven into the structure of your sentence, then you put the name, and immediately after it you put the year of publication, and then at the end of the sentence you can put the page number. The page number may not be mandatory, but definitely the name of the author and the year number is very, very important. So this is parenthetical citation. The next one is a note citation. Now this is a very old form of citation. I've seen old formats, published papers having this, where you write something taken from some author and you put a number to it, and more details about that number is given at the bottom of the paper, which is known as the footnote or endnote. So this is an example of a footnote. But this is very irritating, because every time you read and then you go to the bottom and read it, I personally am not very fond of it. I personally like the bracket, the parenthesis one. And the last one is here, numeric citation. This is mostly used for scientific papers, where you make a list of references and you give a particular number to each reference. And in the text, what you do is you just cite the number instead of the name of the author, year, and every other detail. You just go to the list of reference. Oh, I want to take the third reference, so insert the third reference in brackets, or maybe you're talking about the fourth reference in brackets. So this is known as numeric citation, where the citation is replaced by a number. And anybody who is interested in knowing more about it can go back to the list of references, which is there at the end of your article. Okay, next, there are a lot of free grammar checkers. I personally would never want to pay for any software that I'm using. So you can look for n number of free softwares, and just to be sure, run your work through 2 or 3 different softwares, because free softwares may not be 100% fail proof. So it is good that you run it through 2 or 3 different software, and that will make it very strong in terms of finding out the grammatical mistakes. And the next one, which is most important, this is where I come back to the first quotation, that Google is not synonymous with research. You copy paste, and any publisher which is a good journal, index journal, the first thing they will do is they'll run your paper, the soft copy of your paper, through a plagiarism checker. And if there is anything like 83% plagiarism, you have no chances ever of getting published. So what is the accepted percentage of plagiarism for any journal? It is between 10 to 15%. And that to 10 to 15% is because at times you might have to use definitions, which are from dictionaries. At times you might have to use quotations from other people. So it allows you a 10 to 15%. But good plagiarism checkers, just see, they tell exactly which part is plagiarized in red, and not only that, it gives you the source also, exactly from which website it has been picked up. So there is no way you can fool people, and you will embarrass yourself. You don't run your work through a plagiarism checker. This is an absolute must. And there are n number of free plagiarism checkers, but use 3 consecutively for the same paper to be absolutely sure what percentage of your paper is taken from the internet. Okay, next one, the last part. I'm sorry, I think I've gone really over time. The last part, I'm going to talk about some of the software which is a must have. Now, yesterday I was watching Dr. Krishnamurthy's session, and I completely agree with him that technology has made us lose our creativity. And because there is something like Google, we feel it is free for us to go ahead and copy paste and just prepare a paper. But there is one more aspect to the use of software, is that in research there's a lot of repetitive work involved. For example, during my time, I have spent simply days typing out my list of references, and it was such a headache. I wasted a lot of time, which a researcher in today's time would barely take 15 minutes to prepare a list of reference. So why would you want to waste that kind of time when all you have to do is learn a new software which takes maybe half an hour? So here is a very good quote: life is like a software. Debug your problems, solve all your problems. I have spent days on end, so I could have solved it only if I knew the different softwares. At our time, these softwares were not available, but now you people are very lucky. You can update yourself and you can learn. Okay, so what are the three softwares I'm going to be talking about? And I want to draw your attention to the fact that all the three I'm going to be talking about are 100% free. There is absolutely no charges, and all of these software run on all the platforms. That means if you have a Windows system, it will run. If you have Linux, Ubuntu, if you have iOS, a MacBook, everything, for all of them these will run. Okay, the first one is Mendeley. Now Mendeley is an amazing software. What does it do? It is a reference manager. It helps you download all your papers. It helps you arrange the papers. And when you finish your work, it also creates your citation. So it works as a citation generator. You don't have to type your citation. You just click on the paper that you want to cite from, and it will automatically make the citation in whichever format you want. You want it in the APA format, you want it in the ML format, you just have to click on it and it will make it on its own and give it to you ready made. So Mendeley is absolutely free, and it will take you basically a 5-minute tutorial on YouTube to understand how Mendeley works. So I insist all of you, please go home and download Mendeley. It's absolutely free and it's fantastic. Of all the softwares, this is the best. The next one is in research papers. You at times would need to make flowcharts. You at times would need to draw diagrams, maybe graphs. So you need a software that will allow you to make line drawings. What is a vector image? Any drawing which is made with lines is a vector image. So Inkscape is very, very useful. It is similar to Paint, those of you who have seen Paint and used it, but it is a lot more effective than Paint, because it allows you a lot more manipulation. And this also would take you 10 to 15 minutes tutorial to understand. And the last one, this one, I don't know why it is not very prevalent in India, but every research scholar outside India is onto LaTeX. Now, what is LaTeX? LaTeX is very similar to a Word document. It's a word processor, basically. So in India, we are very fond of Microsoft products, and we use Word document for everything. But LaTeX is much more superior, and it's open source. It's free to Word document. Now, I'll tell you the reason why it's much more superior. In Word document, you have to literally manually go and highlight things and change. So it takes a lot of time to format. But in LaTeX, you just write one sentence of command on the left hand side and it changes everything in the entire page, in the entire document. So you don't have to go through each and every page doing formatting and editing. And that is the best part of LaTeX. And the document that LaTeX will produce is very, very professional looking, almost like how publishers publish. It looks exactly like that. So in the next page, here is a screenshot of Mendeley, and you see how it has a dashboard with all the tools. It has a library where you can store. Now here it is, see, it's clicked on library. So here you have all your documents you have recently added, your favorite papers which need reviewing. That means you've just collected and you don't know if they are useful. Your publications, previous publications, unsorted, topic 1, topic 2. So you can keep on making folders and arranging your data. You can remove folder, you can create groups. That means when you're doing research, maybe with another co-author, you can share your writing, document everything. It is pretty much the way we use WhatsApp, and we can share with other people. So you can import from the web, you can simply download from the internet. So look at here they have downloaded the papers, maybe from some database index, and most of them are in the PDF form. So you can go into it, and it also helps you to generate your citation at the end. This is fantastic. It's a must that you should go and try this. Here, Inkscape, I said it looks very much like Paint. So here on the left hand side, you have your toolbar and everything, and here you basically draw images, graphs, any kind of flowchart. Now, a few slides back, I showed a flowchart. Now, that flowchart is very easy to make if you go to a software like Inkscape, and it's vector image because it's consisting of lines. And here, the last one is an example of LaTeX. Now, this is the area, this is your workspace. On the right hand side, this is where you write. But if you want to change anything in the entire document, all you do is go here and write instruction. Now, this requires a little bit of training. That means maybe a day to learn a latex, but once you learn it, you have won half the battle of publishing. So again, please go ahead and check out these three software. Okay, next, every time I do a webinar, people ask me, please give me a list of journals where I can publish. I don't know, people really don't want to do a lot of research, or maybe because they don't know how to go about it. So, what I did is I have given five journals, Indian journals, which are indexed by Scopus. Now, it's a big deal to be indexed in Scopus here. And this is the name of the journal here. This is the name of the publisher here, Amity University or Sage Publication. I love Sage Publication, they're really good. And the last part is the ISSN number. So these are five journals that are indexed in Scopus. They're really good. I have looked at these mostly to do with literature and language. Now, if you go to the UGC care list, they have a group 1 and group 2. Now, group 1 has all the journals which are accepted in India by UGC, but group 2 has all the Indian journals which are indexed internationally. So, if you're really aiming high, then you should go and look at group 2 uh, um, articles. This I have garnered, these five I have garnered from group 2. And the last page here, I wanted to show you that there's no point in me giving a few fish, few names of journals. You should be self-sufficient enough to search for your own journal. So what I did, this is a screenshot of my own computer. I went and logged into scopus.com. I told you that Scopus is paid, but at the same time, it allows you for a free preview. So you first go to Scopus. Here is the logo of Elsevier on the left hand side, and here you can create an account. Once you create an account, you can go inside without creating. Also, you can go inside, and here you can choose your subject area. So here I've chosen language and linguistics, literature and literary theory. And the moment I press enter, look at what amazing thing happens. I get 1,632 journals. These journals are listed alphabetically. It gives you the impact factors, citation scores, and everything. And here, if you want to look at only open access journals, that means where you don't have to pay a single penny to look at them, you can click on display and it will display. So I have given an example of Scopus, but like I mentioned in the beginning, that the DOJ is really good. So it is absolutely free and all open access journals. So maybe you can look at it. But if you're really a serious researcher, it is worthwhile to get yourself a subscription for Scopus, or you can insist your institution or college to have an institutional subscription, and you can use this. So this is all from my side. If you want to reach out to me for any queries, here is my phone number. Please don't call me. I miss my calls most times, but you can message me on WhatsApp. This is my email address. And I have my own YouTube channel, and all the past webinars, I have stored the webinars in the channel. I would be very grateful if you can subscribe. I keep requesting the audience to subscribe, but when I go back and I check my channel, nobody is making the effort. So I spend a lot of time preparing these webinars, and I'll really be very, very rewarded if you please take 5 seconds of your time and subscribe to my channel. I promise it, the contents are really not going to be a waste of your time. Dr. Parker, can you please post the link to my channel in the YouTube chat box?
Yes, ma'am,
Um,
I've done
yes,
it.
yeah. Thank you. And with that, I will say, thank you from my side. I am ready for questions now.